Welcome back, GED scholars, to another social studies video. And in this video, we are going to talk about analyzing an author's purpose and point of view. And if you're like, wait, didn't you already teach that to us? Yes, I did. There is a video, folks, that we talked about the same topic, but it was through the lens of the Reasoning Through Language Arts exam. Please remember, as I've mentioned in other videos, there are a lot of skills that you use for the Reasoning Through Language Arts exam or the social studies that you can use on the other exam. It's vice versa. And some of these skills you can even use when it comes to the science exam too. But for this video, we're going to talk about the author's point of view and their purpose through the lens of social studies. Please make sure to check out the other video though, even though it's through the lens of Reasoning Through Language Arts, we do go over an example. And as I've mentioned, folks, it's one thing to learn this skill, it's another thing to use it. And sometimes it's easier to use that skill to make sure you understand it when you see someone go through a problem using that skill. Please make sure to visit gedtalk.com. We have many resources on the resource page, so check that out. And don't be shy about checking out some of the other videos. As I mentioned, these skills that you are learning are going to be able to be used throughout a lot of the exams. So when it comes to the social studies exam, folks, when it comes to the author's purpose, most of the reading you will do, even when it comes to the maps and the political cartoons that you will see, the author's purpose is either going to be to narrate, to inform, to persuade, and not entertain so much. So let's go back up to the top of the list. So the first purpose we see is to narrate. And so if you have an author who's narrating or informing you about something, they're going to be recounting events chronologically. And so the example we can think about is if you read an excerpt from a biography or a autobiography. That is something where you could say, okay, the author, their purpose in writing this was to share some information to inform me about the events that took place during somebody's life. If it's an autobiography, we know because of that word auto, it's the author writing about themselves. So that's one of the purposes we see when it comes to social studies documents, even when it comes to the visuals that we will see, the maps, the political cartoons, even graphs, you guys. If you're like, seriously, lady? Yeah. Especially when we come down to the second purpose, which is to inform. We see here it says that when the purpose is to inform, the author is presenting facts and data to explain a subject or idea. And although we see the example news articles, let's go back to the concept of like a graph that you would see. And you've seen in some of the other videos me explaining graphs, timetables, things like that. So you just have to think about, okay, the author is just sharing all of this data with me. And instead of writing it out in a passage of some sort, they decided to give me a visual. And that was either, like a timeline or a graph or something like that. But you could definitely see that that author's purpose was to inform you. This next one is a purpose that we see a lot when it comes to social studies material. Once again, documents, maps, images, things like that. And that's when the author's purpose is to persuade the reader. And so what they want to do is to change the reader's mind. So it's important when we are reading these different articles or passages, when we're looking at images, whether it's when you're studying or when you are actually taking the exam, that the author is going to have a bunch of different biases. And so I know I've talked about this in another video, and it actually might have been the RLA video where we talk about author's purpose and point of view. But when an author has a bias, that means that they're going to talk about something with a lot higher regard than whatever they're comparing it to, because they have a specific point of view. And so a bias could be like they're uplifting something or they're trying to drag it down. So we have to be mindful of that, especially when it comes to the exam, because you will see questions like, what is the author's tone? Or what do you think the purpose of this passage is? And then you could say, I read a lot of biases within this passage, or I can see it in the image that I'm looking at. So I know this is the author's point of view, things like that. And so you also want to make sure you remember when it comes to any of the readings, folks, whether it's the RLA exam or the social studies exam, that you're going to either need to think about stuff thoroughly and make inferences, or it's going to be explicitly stated, and that's either like the purpose the author has or their central idea, whatever it might be. And so you have to remember there is a difference. When it's implicit, that means it's not stated outright for you. You have to read in between the lines, versus explicit, where the author is like, this is how I feel, this is my opinion, you're not confused, there is no doubt, this is how I'm standing when it comes to the subject. So just make sure you pay attention to that, folks. But also remember, author's purpose is either to narrate, inform, or to persuade you. And those are the top three reasons why the authors of the passages, the images that you see on the social studies exam wrote or created whatever it is you're looking at. So, connected to the author's purpose for creating whatever it is you're looking at, we also have the author's point of view. And so, the author's point of view is their perspective on the topic, and that could be a number of different topics when it comes to the social studies exam, but they're history based topics. So, be mindful of that as well. And so, author's purpose for writing the passage or the article, as I mentioned earlier, is either going to be narrate, to inform, and to persuade. And so, because they have this purpose, because they have a specific perspective on a topic, they are going to present details in a specific way in which they'll use certain words as well to help you have a better understanding of how they view something. Because as we know, you're going to use poor words to express something when it's, a subject or something that you dislike versus when it's something you do like, you're going to use awesome words, right? You're going to use words to make sure the reader knows, like, this is my point of view. I agree with this. I disagree with that. And so, even coming back to the concept of details, which we've talked about in our videos when we talk about the reasoning through language arts exam and the extended writing response, right? Because you have to make sure you pull on the details presented to you in the passage. And so if you're like, well, what are details? So we're looking at facts, we're looking at judgments, we're looking at opinions. And so when it comes to facts acting as details or evidence for what the author is sharing with you, we know that it's information that can be proven to be true. Facts are not opinions, folks, right? If you're like, in my opinion, I think that chocolate ice cream is better than vanilla ice cream, that's an opinion. If you're like, no, it's a fact, it can be proven. No, it can't be proven to be true, folks, because it is. That's like the taste of ice cream is totally subjective. It is based on that person. And so you have to make sure you pay attention to facts versus opinions. That's really important to be able to differentiate when it comes to the social studies exam. The other thing that you might see when it comes to social studies documents, images, whatever it might be, are judgments that you'll see like the author is sharing with you. And it's basically the author is coming to a conclusion with evidence that it's supported by reasons that are legitimate. They're logically able to explain to you why they're making this judgment call on whatever it might be. The other part of this is the opposite, I should say, of facts. As I mentioned, are opinions, and opinions are beliefs about situations, about events, about people, whatever it might be. So we need to make sure that when it comes to the writer's point of view, if you see that the writer is sharing a lot of opinion, it's not a good way to persuade someone if it's just based on the author's own opinion. So it's kind of a weak argument. So let's go ahead and look at this example. And what I'm looking for here is I want to look at how these two different people, this first paragraph is by Congresswoman Burns, and the second one is by a concerned citizen. But I want to see how do these people share their point of view when it comes to writing about, well, it seems that they're talking about food. So let's go ahead and get started. The new organic food safety regulations are likely to increase the average cost of some food staples. The costs are justified, however, by the peace of mind that comes from knowing your food is safe and healthy. Okay, so right off the bat, I see some words that I'm interested in and I want to bring attention to. So we know that it's about food safety. So that's important to know that this is what she's talking about. But more important is the fact that she's talking about regulations when it comes to food safety, and that within this little blurb, we know that Congresswoman Burns is okay with the average cost of some food staples rising. And we see this because within the two sentences, we know that Congresswoman Burns is okay with the average cost of some food staples rising because she's saying it's justified. However, she's saying, but I know the costs are going up, you guys, but that's where we see however. It's okay though, because you'll get the peace of mind knowing that your food is safe and healthy. Let's read what the concerned citizen has to say. Rising prices are a cancer eating away at our families. High costs will drive people away from healthy foods and wind up harming our children's diets. Instead of buying wholesome natural products, parents will feed their kids fast food. Okay, that is a lot. And if you're like, lady, that was like a couple sentences, whatever, she's not, talking with using words that I'm concerned about. Well, you should be, folks, because look at what she says in that first sentence. She says, rising prices are a cancer. A cancer. Oh my gosh. Imagine if someone, was talking crap to you and they called you a cancer. We know cancer is deadly. Cancer, nobody likes cancer. Everybody hates cancer. Look at how many wars there are to fight cancer. But this concerned citizen uses this word in order for you, the reader, to know how he or she feels about the concept of rising prices when it comes to foods. So they are a cancer eating away at our families. High costs will drive people away from healthy foods and wind up harming and not just harming anybody, but who? Children. Oh my gosh, that's nothing. That is, nobody wants to hear about children being harmed, or let alone their diets being harmed. So this concerned citizen knows about using strong words to make you, the reader, agree with their point of view versus the other side. And then it even goes on to say that instead of buying the wholesome foods, parents will feed their kids fast foods. And this is basically the way I'm reading this last sentence, especially this last part right here, is the concerned citizen saying, you raise those prices, it's your fault when the kids are unhealthy because the parents have to buy them fast food. So if we were to say, who won this battle, GED talk lady, it would definitely say the concerned citizen, with the fact that they were mindful of word choice, basically shared their point of view in a very strong way. Because as we come down here with this question, we see which of the following constitute loaded words the concerned citizen uses to support her point of view. As I mentioned, folks, the fact that she calls it, or he calls it, whichever, a cancer, that is a loaded word. That is a very loaded word to say that something is a cancer. It's something that nobody likes and we want to get rid of it. But the other thing is when concerned citizen brought up the children's diet, because remember, that'll pull at people's emotions, especially when you bring children into the equation. People are either going to be very protective, or they're going to, be protective and very emotional about it. So as we can see, those are going to be two loaded words used by the concerned citizen to change the reader's mind or their reader's point of view. So they or you are agreeing with them. Thanks for watching the video, folks. I hope you have a better understanding of what it means when you're asked to explain the author's purpose or their point of view or their tone, their word choice, anything like that. Remember, folks, whether it's the social studies exam or the RLA exam, the author has a purpose in writing or creating whatever it is you're looking at. And so in this video, we talked about the top 3 reasons why authors write, especially when it comes to social studies documents, maps, images, timelines, whatever it might be. So make sure you pay attention to that. Also, don't forget, check out the RLA video we did on the same topic. It doesn't hurt, folks, to hear the same information over again. We do complete a problem in the other video, so make sure you check that out as well. And if you haven't already, please make sure you visit gedtalk.com on our resources page, where we share a lot of different resources. If there's something specific you're looking for, folks, please go ahead and drop a comment down below. Let me know what you are hoping to find when it comes to resources and the social studies exam. Remember, folks, you know what you're doing. Keep your head up. You've got this. And folks, don't forget to use technology wisely. So once again, I came over to Google and I placed in the search bar GED. Remember, that narrows the search. And then I typed in analyze author's purpose and point of view. And like always, Google AI overview will give you some information. Make sure you study that. If you're like, hey lady, this is the same stuff that you just went over, I understand. But once again, it doesn't hurt to reread information that will help you pass this exam. So going back up though, as you know, I like to click on the more option at the top and come down to books. And once again, I use Kaplan with my students when it comes to the GED study guide. And Kaplan, like some of the other companies that you might see when you click on the books portion of the GED search, Kaplan is giving Google permission to show you a preview of what they have in their guidebook. The thing is, folks, is that not all of the lessons will show, or as you can see, this is the lesson that we just went over right here. Analyze author's purpose and point of view. Once again, read this information. If you're like, really, a third time? Yes, a third time. But when you come down to where they give you practice questions, there is an image of a poster that some of these questions are based off of. And so you don't see that. That is missing here is going to be this image, which, as I mentioned, is going to have some of those questions based off of that. So just as long as you've seen this picture and you're like, okay, I have an understanding of, what the question is asking, because not only am I able to read the passage itself, but the GED talk lady was nice enough to show me the image that's missing from that page, so I would be able to answer those questions correctly. And so, as I mentioned, please use technology wisely. And I understand sometimes, folks, if you can't afford to purchase the Kaplan GED guidebook or any of the guidebooks, they run between $25 to $30. You can find them anywhere. You could find a book, Amazon, Walgreens, Target. The only thing that I make sure my students understand is that you don't want to purchase one that has already been used and written in, because then it kind of, it's pointless for you to have that book. People already completed the problems for you.